Hi, my name is Paul, and I'm an addiction counselor, or whatever you want to call it. And I do this YouTube channel to provide information about the things that I talk about with clients for them, as well as for anybody else. And so this video specifically is geared towards people who are on the outside, perhaps. And well, I guess the way I want to, I don't. So if you don't know me, I don't speak clearly in these videos. If you watch some of the other ones, you'll see that this is a pattern of mine, and that's okay because these are just for fun and for education purposes. I guess some of the topics might not be considered fun, but some of them I enjoy talking about. Some of this, and this one might be a little more serious. But so where did I go? I got lost already. So the point is, you might not be experiencing addiction, but someone you love is, someone you care about, and that's who I'm speaking to right now. So a sibling or a parent or a child or a spouse or whatever the case may be, maybe a friend, and you are concerned about their addiction behaviors. And in your best intentions, you're offering support in the only way you know how, and maybe they are resisting your support, resisting your advice, resisting your encouragement. Maybe you've experienced addiction and you speak from personal experience. This is what worked for me, and they're resistant to that. Maybe you've studied a lot and you're sharing the information that you've studied, and they're resistant to that. Whatever the case may be, they are resistant to your efforts to help. Or maybe not. But in the case that they are resistant to your efforts to help, I think it's important to remember that they are in charge of their own life. And you may mean well, and probably do, but it might not be perceived that way. And not as an attack on you, but it's impossible for us to know what another person is experiencing. And they can tell us, they can communicate it to us, but even that isn't a full picture, because we will share certain details with certain people, even if they're the closest people to us in our lives. When you think about it for yourself, what kind of information would you share with your sibling, with your spouse, with your parent, with whoever, with your friends? And now if it's about a very personal subject, do you share differently between your friend and your brother? Do you share differently when it's on a certain topic? And so even though you're sharing that information with somebody, you might not be sharing the complete picture. You're sharing what you feel comfortable sharing. And so your loved one who is experiencing addiction might be in that same category, that same boat. They're sharing with you what they feel comfortable sharing with you. They're going to share with their counselor what they feel comfortable sharing there, their doctor, and whoever else in their life. They're going to feel comfortable sharing different parts of that with different people. And so you might feel like you've got a complete picture, but you probably don't. And if you have experienced it or studied it yourself, addiction, or associated topics, you might feel like you know, and they just won't listen. And that might be accurate. That's possibly a fair assessment of the scenario, but you can't control that person. And even if it's for their own good, even if it's for their safety, they're their own person, and they're going to make these choices for themselves. And it might pain you to see them suffer, but that's their experience. And this can be really difficult for the bystander to kind of accept this and allow this in their life, when you feel like if they would only listen, it could save them all this trouble. And we all have that experience. We watch TV, you watch the news, and you think, well, if these people would only do this, it wouldn't be such a difficult situation for them. Or as a counselor, I can sometimes sit and have that conversation with somebody, and I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, if they would just do this thing. It's so simple. I've seen it happen. I've seen so many people benefit from this. I've studied so much about this topic. If they would just do this one thing, they would have vast improvement in their life. And I try to introduce that as a possibility, but if I come at them and say, look, this is what you need to do. First off, blah, blah, blah. Second, blah, blah, blah. And tell them they have to do it this way, and if they do it, then everything's solved. That's a difficult thing to communicate to somebody in a way that they're going to be responsive to it. And so I've developed ways, I guess, with certain, as I develop a relationship with somebody in counseling, I'm able to bring that up to varying levels. And some people I can get right to the point and say it and know that it's going to be uncomfortable for them to hear, but I've gotten to a point where I understand how to talk about that thing with that person. And there's other people that I can't do that with, that it takes longer, it takes more time, or that they're not prepared for it, or I don't know the right way to speak to them. I don't know how to explain it. And I've had that experience where I think I'm explaining it in a coherent, receivable way, and then it's not received that way. And so everybody's different. We're all different. And that, I guess, is the key to remember. I don't know how many times have I said this is important to remember. Maybe not a lot this time, but I do that often. I'll keep saying as I go along, I'll say, oh, and this is important to remember. And oh, and this is important to remember. A lot of it's important. At least I think so. This is my opinion, though. This is my opinion. This is my theoretical approach. This is my opinion. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. But I had this imagery. I was talking to somebody this morning about, like you have a tree out in the nature, and next to it is a flower. And this tree is all grown up and huge. And it says to the flower, why don't you bloom? Why aren't you blooming yet? Would you just start blooming? You'll be so much better off if you just bloom already. And the flower says, I'm not ready to. You're in my way. You're blocking my sunlight. You're soaking up all my water. I can't get to it because you're in my way. And I thought of this as maybe this is how we interact with each other. And now this is more general. Again, I'm not speaking to anybody specifically here because I don't know anybody specific. Well, I know a lot of people specifically, but I don't know you specifically. And so if you end up seeing this because somebody in your life is experiencing addiction and they're somehow connected with me, this isn't directly to you because I don't know you, right? I might know them. I can neither confirm or deny, but I might know them, and that might be how you got access to that. You got linked to this video because they thought it was something that would be worth sharing with you to help explain what's going on, perhaps. But I don't know. So I'm not speaking to anybody directly. But I think that generally speaking, we do this as people. We have expectations of how life should be, or how we should be, how other people should be, people in our lives. And we look at them through our lens, and I'll say, if I look at my brother and say, you should be doing this in your life, you should be doing this with your career or your family, and I'm the closest to him genetically and experience-wise on the whole planet. The two of us are closer in those things than either of us and any other person. But it's not my place to say those things. I can offer it. I can offer my suggestion. But if I try to hold him accountable, or I judge him for whether or not he participates with my perspective, or if I make my love for him conditional upon his acceptance and agreement with my recommendations, that's not fair, because I'm looking at him through my perspective. And he's got his own perspective of the world. He has his own experience. Maybe he is that flower and I'm that tree who's blocking his sunlight and blocking his water intake and telling him that he needs to do more. He needs to go faster or grow or progress better. He needs to change himself so he'll be more in line with what I expect him to do, with the growth that I wanted to see in him. And it's not fair to do that. And it's not natural to do that. But we want to, and it comes from a good place, and it might feel like it's coming from love because we want to see that person do the best that they can. And this can get into deep philosophical and spiritual conversation, because how do we know what anybody's purpose is? How do we know what our own purpose is? And so that goes a lot deeper than what I want to get into right here. And again, that comes down to opinion and belief sets. But I like this idea of the tree speaking to the flower and telling it to do something, and the flower responding, I can't because you're in my way. And because it can, from the flower's perspective, the tree is in its way, but it's not the tree's fault, and it's nothing to do with the tree, And from the tree's perspective, well, the flower is just not living up to its nature, but it's not the flower's fault. There's well, okay, now we're getting too far out. I guess it comes down to where you believe addiction comes from, and that's a different story, I guess. But I mean, sometimes my analogies, I take them too deep, right? I go beyond the efficiency of it. But anyway, so let's stop with that part of it, though. But this idea that we come up to another person and say, you're not what I think you should be, and here's how you could be what I think you should be. And we need to stop ourselves in that moment and say, why do I think this person needs to be anything other than what they are? Why am I not loving and accepting them the way that they are? And how is it hurting me that they're not doing the things that I think they should be doing? And this is going to be upsetting to people to hear, or it might be eye-opening. I don't know. And it'll be both. It'll be everything. But this is the way I see it. And as I work with more and more people who are experiencing addiction and hear more and more stories about how their family members are participating in their efforts to overcome addiction, or just in their life in general, I feel like these are some things that need to be talked about. And ideally, not between me and you, but between you and your loved one who's experiencing addiction. Unfortunately, there's a lot of hurt feelings and traumas and broken trusts that are involved in that relationship. So these kind of conversations can be really difficult to have. There's also a lot of depression and anxiety underlying the addiction, possibly in your life as well, because we all experience these things. These are some of the scars of life. And so it becomes difficult for us to have these conversations with each other. And so we have to, again, my opinion, I think that, so I don't want to say we have to, but I think we could benefit from being more mindful and aware of ourselves and our relationship, and what can we do to not overstep our natural field of growth and influence, and to speak to the person lovingly, without condition, without judgment, without expectation, and say, I'm concerned about what I see, and here's why. And then in the ideal situation, they would say, I understand, I hear your concern, I understand that, and here's why I disagree with you, or here's why I agree with you, or here's what I would like to do. And we have that open conversation, and that's ideal. And that's when we're not each dealing with our own anxieties and our depressions and traumas and stuff like that. So because we are dealing with our own personal lived experience, it's important to remember to not take things personally, to realize that the tree telling the flower to do better, it's got nothing to do with the flower. That's the tree's perspective, and that's why the tree is saying that. And for the flower to say, I can't because you're in my way, or whatever, or you don't know me, we're not the same thing, whatever it is, it has nothing to do about the tree. That's not personal to the tree when the flower says it, and it's not personal to the flower when the tree says it. It's personal to the person saying it, and that's where our responsibility lies. And so that might be, I guess that's my recommendation, is to have the conversation from a place of unconditional love, total acceptance, and not taking anything personally. I don't know. Social connection is important. Family connection, friends, and stuff. These are important elements in helping to get to the root causes underlying the addiction. It's never been about the drug. It's about the persistent pattern of self-harming behavior. And what's that from? Oftentimes it's from a disconnect from self. And what's that from? Can be difficult relationships, could be traumatic experiences, could be illness, sickness, all kinds of things. I've got videos talking about all those kind of ideas. Whenever I come up with something that I feel like is important, I do one of these videos. So there's a lot of topics. So maybe if you are experiencing addiction on a secondhand nature, or as the loved one of someone who's undergoing or experiencing addiction, trying to overcome it, maybe there's some information here that could be useful for you. Check them out. If not, that's fine too. But hopefully some of this has been helpful to you, increasing your awareness. And if not, well, thank you for watching anyway. And I wish you all the best. Take care.